Hello, dear friends. War is a massacre between people who do not know each other for the benefit of people who do know each other but do not kill each other. Not war, war is a bitch, as a song used to say. Opinion piece. There will be no world war. There will be no nuclear escalation. 5-power agreement. Cobra update. Communication from the Pleiadians. They are trying to create a world war. Not the Pleiadians, of course. Russian military meeting with Pleiadians. Russian army distrusts Pleiadians. They want to liberate the planet instead of Russia. This led Putin to seek an alliance with China. He also extends his influence to Cuba and Venezuela. Sweden reinforces its military contingent in Gotland. A large underwater volcano explodes on the island of Tonga. Central banks sell dollars to buy gold. Ukraine says Russia not responsible for cyber attack. Elon Musk warns we are entering a financial crisis. Eurozone suffers trade deficit for first time since 2014. Grocery shortages increase as supplies dry up. Let's start. The Pleiadians have communicated that no nuclear escalation will be allowed and all missiles will be intercepted, but they are still asking people to pray and meditate for peace between Russia and NATO in order to avoid any unnecessary violence, according to the updated Cobra report released by the 2012 portal of the Intelligence Center for the Victory of Light. He adds that with the end of the health crisis, the dark forces have stuck with their usual strategy of trying to manifest World War III. Now we are trying to do this by engineering a conflict between Russia and NATO, whose situation has become critical. The first target would be to attack satellites and then radar stations. 5-power agreement to avoid nuclear war. 5 countries signed it on January 3rd. China, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, and the US. The 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council pledged to prevent the proliferation of nuclear weapons, affirming that any war using them can never be won. This is a bad translation. Tension. According to international tension, according to Hal Turner, Russia asked for the security guarantees for NATO and was not given them, so he said he would get them by other means. It is preparing Russian aircraft capable of attacking enemy satellites and has begun airlifting strategy supplies to the end of the world bunker at Mount Yamantau in the Ural Mountains. Ukraine continues to prepare to attack Donetsk and Luhansk. F-16s have been positioned in Ukraine and F-15s have been positioned in Romania, while the US Army has throughout the week called up active reservists for immediate deployment to Europe. 1,000 tanks were also sent to Romania and Greece. Most of you are aware of reports in the media for several months that Russia is massing troops along the Ukrainian border. What those reports didn't say is that it was in response to Ukraine concentrating almost 50% of its entire military along the border of 2 breakaway states, Luhansk and Donetsk. Those 2 states in eastern Ukraine want to leave Ukraine and join Russia, but the Ukrainian government will not allow it. The reason those two states want to leave Ukraine is because in 2014 they fomented unrest and protest inside Ukraine that resulted in the overthrow of their president Viktor Yanukovych. A cyber attack in Ukraine. Ukraine says Russia not responsible for massive cyber attack. Kiev says Friday's massive cyber attack on Ukrainian government websites was carried out by a group linked to Belarusian intelligence services. Sweden reinforces its military contingent on Gotland. The Swedish government has reinforced the island of Gotland with troops and military personnel in the face of rising tensions between Western countries and Russia. Civilian trucks loaded with material and vehicles were transported. Gotland, Sweden's largest island, is strategically located in the Baltic Sea and has deployed an upgraded surface-to-air missile defense system. Russian subway base. Russian top commanders have already met several times this year with their Pleiadian advisors deep in the subway Yamantau complex, built in the early 1990s and expanded in 1996, which is one of the two main Pleiadian contact sites for the Russian military. On April 16, 1996, the New York Times reported on a mysterious military base being built in Russia. In quotes, in a secret project reminiscent of the harshest days of the Cold War, Russia is building a gigantic subway military complex in the Ural Mountains in western Russia, say Russian officials and witnesses. Hidden inside Yamantau mountain in the Belarus area of the southern Urals, the project involved the creation of a huge complex served by a railroad, a road and thousands of workers. The New York Times quoted Russian officials as describing the secret subway complex as a mining site, a repository of Russian treasures, a food storage area, and a bunker for Russia's leaders in the event of a nuclear war. Beginning in the Brezhnev period, Russia has been pursuing the construction of a massive subway facility in Yamantau Mountain and the city of Medjugorje. The complex is said to be being built by tens of thousands of workers and covers an area of up to 400 square miles, the size of the Washington area. The exact location of this large facility is uncertain. It is apparently located near a nuclear weapons production plant and the Yutan domestic nuclear weapons storage facility. The Russian military began to develop trust issues against the Pleiadians towards the end of last year, when they began to realize that the Pleiadians are there not only to protect Russia against foreign invasion, but to actually and literally liberate the planet. This led Putin to seek a stronger alliance with China, which is his first major geopolitical strategic mistake. China has a unique and interesting history. Its culture and advances in science are remarkable, as is its aggressive invasion of Tibet, genocide of the Uyghurs, its threat to Taiwan, its repression in Hong Kong, and its military biotechnology. Some experts believe that China will be the greatest threat we will face in the future. Now that things are getting serious, the Russian military is listening a bit more to the Pleiadians again, especially since their last meeting on January 6th. They have succeeded in aborting an attempt at a color revolution in Kazakhstan and are now expanding Russian influence into Cuba and Venezuela to counter NATO. After Kazakhstan, the era of the color revolution is over. The year 2022 began with Kazakhstan in flames, a serious attack on one of the key axes of Eurasian integration. We are just beginning to understand what and how it happened. Kazakhstan puts death toll at 225, 4,500 injured in protests, and all of 225 people were killed and more than 4,500 injured in violent protests that rocked Kazakhstan last week and were harshly suppressed by Kazakh security forces. Amid stalled talks between Russia and NATO over what is a novel division of Europe into a geopolitical sphere of influence, Russia has decided to take the show on the road and show the US what it feels like to be surrounded by military bases along its border, and on Thursday, Russia's deputy foreign minister suggested Moscow could send a military deployment to Venezuela and Cuba as the Kremlin seeks to pressure Washington to respond to its demand to halt Western military activity. Cleanup. The war to liberate this planet on the non-physical planes has intensified. While the dark forces attack whenever they can, the forces of light are cleansing the dark networks and have already succeeded in eliminating most of the primary anomalies on the astral plane. The main focus now is the clearing of the primary anomaly on the lower mental plane and the so-called invisibles. The invisibles are archontic entities that inhabit the lower mental plane around the surface of the planet, and are the ones that create and manifest the matrix of false ideas. The invisibles are entities that are almost transparent, creamy, opaque droplets, and are almost undetectable even to advanced clairvoyants on the mental plane. Since the invasion of the Archons in 1996, they have succeeded in invading the auric field of the mental body of almost every incarnated being on the surface of this planet. The forces of light estimate that there are about 500 human beings currently incarnated on the planet with their mental body fully intact and infected by invisibles. All others would be at least partially possessed at a mental level from small areas of the mind where the person acts irrationally, to full possession where the person has almost completely lost their free will and their capacity to common sense and rational thought. The key here is to recognize the possession, which would be extremely difficult for most people to do. Expel the entities with the grease, purify the mental body with a violet flame, regain lost mental abilities, and exercise common sense. The cleansing of the web of invisibles will continue at full speed for another month or so, and a peak of stupidity on a global scale is expected in about 2 weeks. The forces of light will then begin to massively clear the energy footprint of the repressed trauma complex of surface humanity, and many situations that couldn't be healed before will suddenly heal easily. More and more members of the dark forces begin to realize that their defeat is near. Financial hit. More than 35 million American families are facing a financial hit. This weekend marks the first time in 6 months that families will not receive a monthly payment from the federal child tax credit program. Households will have tough choices to make as monthly benefits expire. A monthly benefit introduced by the government in 2021 amid a sharp rise in the cost of living saw its last payment in December, leaving millions of families with a crack. Some 10 million children are currently at risk of falling below the poverty line without the enhanced tax credit, according to data provided by the Center of Budget and Policy Priorities, cited by Fox Business. Officials promised that the benefits would be renewed in the coming years. However, parents could be waiting months for the next payment to arrive, with Congress gridlocked. Elon Musk warns we are entering a financial crisis. Elon Musk recently warned of a recession that could arrive at the spring of 2022. Nearly every investor has warned of some sort of economic slowdown, but not many give a timeline as urgent as Elon's latest prediction. Elon Musk lifts value of token by more than 500% in half an hour. The price of the Dojo token rose more than 500% in just half an hour after the CEO of Tesla and the SpaceX wrote the word Dojo in a tweet Thursday. Europe suffers trade deficit for the first time since 2014. For the first time since 2014 in the Eurozone, a trade balance deficit was recorded. European Statistics Office Eurostat reports. Thousands of activists protested again this Saturday in several European cities. They did so en masse in Paris, at a time when the French Parliament is debating a bill that would force more restrictions. In Vienna, they cried out against the thing that will be mandatory in Austria from February. Hundreds of activists protested in Rome's Piazza San Giovanni on Saturday. In Greece, too, activists made their voices heard this Saturday. Djokovic has diplomatic passport. The Serbia embassy in Australia revealed that Novak Djokovic has a special diplomatic passport which guarantees proper treatment for him while visiting other countries in the world. Supply crisis. Grocery shortages increase as supplies dry up. High demand for groceries combined with high freight costs and labor shortages are creating a new round of delays at processed food and fresh produce companies, leading to empty supermarket shelves. Prices are rising to levels not seen for 40 years. Add to that cocktail racial tensions and bitter political divisions, and social unrest could ensue. Prices raise stress throughout the food production chain. Rising food prices squeeze margins and raise stress throughout the production chain, agriculture, industry, and distribution. Stresses that citizens will feel when shopping at least through the spring. Price data at the close of 2021 should show that the global crisis due to the rise in raw materials and transport is already reflected in the bill at the supermarket or traditional grocery store. Violence. Looting of freight cars increases in Los Angeles. Thousands of empty packages purchased over the internet, which will never reach their destination. This is the landscape that is seen every day on the railroad tracks of Los Angeles, where dozens of the freight cars are assaulted by thieves who take advantage of train stops to loot packages. Hostage situation at a Texas synagogue. A suspected gunman took hostages at Beth Israel synagogue in Colleyville, Texas on Saturday. SWAT officers have been deployed to the evacuated area. Shortly after arriving, officers began negotiations with the suspects seeking the release of a rabbi and 3 others. Markets. Oil rises above $86 as dollar falls. Global crude oil prices rose to a 9-week high as the dollar heads for its biggest weekly drop in more than a year, making commodities a more affordable buy for holders of other currencies. BlackRock's assets hit record high. BlackRock has become the first public asset manager with deposits reaching $10 billion, strengthening the company's position at the top of the entire industry. Banks say they are paying for talent as hiring is competitive. Banks face fierce competition to hire and are forced to pay more to recruit and keep talent. And both Citigroup and JP Morgan say they have to pay competitively for people with more professional skills or abilities. Visa announces plans to e-money. Global financial services provider Visa and blockchain firm Consensus have announced plans to build a platform to create and launch central bank digital currencies. Precious metals. Central banks sell dollars to buy gold. Central banks continue to buy gold in this uncertain environment and sell dollars. Metals analyst Craig Hemke forecasts big moves in gold and silver this year as the purchasing power of the dollar continues to fall. Silver would be the post-collapse currency according to the Nomad economist, with everyone focused on gold as an investment vehicle. Many have ignored a metal that is 20 times rarer. Most investors assume that because silver is nearly 50 times cheaper than gold, it is more abundant. They are completely wrong. The world has been reducing its above-ground supply of silver for decades, diminishing the only source of what is available for investment. We have only recently begun to recognize silver as a sound investment. While gold is rarer below the surface, silver is scarcer and undervalued above ground. Silver has been trading in short supply for many years, and I believe it is only a matter of time before the price reconciles to the real value of this beautiful ingot. Silver is 17.5 times more abundant in the Earth's crust than gold, but the amount of gold available above the surface far exceeds that of silver. China. Evergrande debt relief deal. If this week's developments at China's most indebted real estate player are anything to go by, 2022 could see Beijing soften his attempts to purge the sector and make further concessions for economic stability. China's firewall against smart money. China's Great Firewall 2.0 is starting to work in two directions. One focused on blocking overseas websites. The authorities are increasingly hiding information from prying foreign eyes. It will obstruct the flow of the most useful capital. Eruption. Underwater volcano explodes in the island of Tonga. An undersea volcanic eruption occurred Saturday near the Pacific nation of Tonga, causing the country to brace for a tsunami, with large waves forcing people from their homes and havoc spreading to the capital, Nuku'alofa, and plumes of smoke reaching 20,000 meters high. The explosion of the underwater volcano lasted 8 minutes. It was so loud that it was heard in the Fiji Islands more than 800 kilometers away. Tsunami Warning. The National Tsunami Warning Center issued a tsunami warning for most of the west coasts of the US, Hawaii and Alaska, following the massive eruption of an undersea volcano near Tonga. Waves reached California. Waves from a tsunami that was triggered by the eruption of an undersea volcano hit the west coast of the US on Saturday. Also in Japan, a tsunami triggered by a volcanic eruption in Tonga hit the coast of Japan in the early hours of January 16th, just minutes after a warning was issued. Spanish America. Ecuador issued tsunami warning for Puerto Ayora in the Galapagos Islands. The Oceanographic and Antarctic Institute of the Ecuadorian Navy issued a tsunami warning Saturday for the city of Puerto Ayora in the Galapagos Islands. Tsunami of almost 2 meters reaches the coast of Chile. The Chilean coasts were hit on Saturday afternoon by a tsunami with waves of almost 2 meters in the northern area after the eruption of Tonga in the Pacific. Argentina is suffering from an extreme heat wave. Patagonia has been burning for more than a month, and strong winds and high temperatures are worsening the situation. The dense smoke has forced authorities to close part of the National Route 40, which connects the north and south of Argentina through the Andes. The state of emergency decree has made more means available to quell the fires, which include airplanes. Earthquake shakes the island of Flores in Indonesia. Strong earthquake in Indonesia in the waters of Flores Sea. The earthquake of magnitude 7.3 on the Richter scale was felt on the island of Flores with no serious damage reported so far. There were fears that the tremor could trigger a tsunami, but the alert has been cancelled. The quake, located at a shallow depth on the seabed, was strongly felt in several Indonesian towns, where hundreds of residents hurriedly abandoned their homes and jobs to seek refuge on higher ground. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.